So keeping this rolling, my friends, I get to bring even more pals back to the stage here. So let's go on ahead and bring them over. Michael Mills, the CEO of Body and Mind, and John Powell, pal, you are a pal. John Paul, CFO of Australis Capital. Welcome, you guys. How are you?
Terrific.
Really good, Patrick. Great to see you.
Oh, it's good to see you guys. I know you have a lot to talk about, so I'm going to jump out of the way. But if there are questions in the chat, I may jump back in and pose them to you here and there. But why don't you guys run with it for the moment?
That sounds great.
All right.
Fantastic. Well, hey, thanks everyone for joining us on this fireside. I'm the CEO of Body and Mind, and at full disclosure, Australis, who John Paul is the CFO of, was actually a strategic investor in Body and Mind in 2018. They came in and took a fairly significant position in the company, really helped us develop our company and move forward, made some changes in the meantime. They are still a shareholder, just so everyone knows. And, I've really enjoyed getting to know John. John's a fairly new addition to a new management team at Australis. And I think you guys will get to enjoy getting to know John as well. Maybe the first thing that we can talk about is John, how did you get into the cannabis industry?
Yeah, and great to be with everybody today. I realized after I packed for the health club and worked out, and then I realized I had my hockey gear on tonight. So we're cheering for the Vegas Golden Knights tonight, and the game against Colorado. So I imagine there's probably some Avalanche fans in the audience too. So yeah, I'd like to think if I was really smart, I would have gotten in the cannabis industry several years before, because I was in Chicago, and you got five big episodes that were starting up in our city, and it was just sort of invisible to me. So how did I happen to get into it? There's a tech entrepreneur I knew, and he called me up one day on a Sunday and said he had a brother-in-law in California that had a cannabis company, and he had to get the thing public in 4 months or he was going to lose half the company. So I said, sure, I've done IPOs before. My background's been as a CFO with hypergrowth companies, and had no idea what I was getting into on the cannabis industry. That I flew out the next day, and I called up a friend in Chicago, and I asked him, I said, what's the first thing you should know? And he said 280E. I thought 280E was a highway. So shows how much I knew about the industry. But you got out there, we got them public, and learned about all the obstacles we have to face and how to overcome them. And it's so now blessed with my kind of second rodeo here with Australis Capital with Terry Booth as our CEO.
That's awesome. And as you sort of really dug in with your first cannabis business, what did you find about the business that was appealing at that point, and sort of looking forward, what do you see that's appealing going forward here?
Yeah, I've been blessed to have been with some terrific companies and interesting industries in my career. And, one thing that's always important to me is the why. And to me, that's a great thing here. It's such a very powerful why in the cannabis industry. Now, what I did not realize, the medical benefit to is providing for so many people across a wide range of sort of applications, wide range of issues that they were facing. And, I sort of, knew the recreational side, but it was very eye-opening to see the powerful things it was doing for people on the medical side, particularly people who had tried all sorts of things in the regular medical profession. Nothing was working. Then they tried cannabis, and suddenly it was like, magic to them. And they were like new people. So to me, that's big. Another very appealing thing is that, we're so early in the game. And I was involved in the early days of generic pharmaceuticals in the U.S., involved in the early days of wireless telecom. And you can certainly remember, and I did some of the crazy stuff during the dot-com days. So, you don't have these opportunities that come along very often to be part of a very transformational industries at a very early stage. So I like to say these kind of things come up maybe once a generation. So that's very exciting to me.
Yeah, I agree. And John, I think you really hit the nail on the head with the medical applications. And I think we all saw that the DEA's given some new authorization for testing recently. Up until now, most of the really in-depth cannabis testings come out of Israel. I've certainly read a lot of the papers. There are some incredible benefits here. And certainly when I talk to medical patients, the stories that you hear about people and having their lives changed, it really is incredible. And I agree with you. I think that this industry is in the middle of transformation. I think we've seen more advances really almost in the last 6 or 8 months in cannabis than we have probably in the combined prior 2 or 3 years. And I don't really see that slowing down. I'd love to get your take on that as well.
Yeah, I mean, one of the industries I came from with the early days of generic pharmaceuticals, and there too was, what different was it was kind of a nationwide regulation. So, what's different here about cannabis, we like to say one of our sayings is that every state is a different country. So, it varies so much, how you approach each particular state. But in the generic industry, it was nationwide, but it was still, it's like the legislator passed a bill, Waxman hats, that said, now you just have to prove that generic drugs are the equivalent. But poor FDA, they don't really give them any additional funding. So now suddenly this whole new industry, this whole new workload being put on the FDA, and it's kind of a big challenge for them over time to develop the approval process, kind of work through the queue. And, eventually they kind of got into a rhythm, but it was, some very interesting transitions along the way as companies tried to figure out how could they get in first position in that particular industry. And you see some of this, some of that here, the big impact of the regulatory environment. But here it's so interesting because instead of looking at one country, you're really looking at 50 different stages here. And each one's a very different, very appealing. But one thing I still say is very similar. People matter. It really comes down to, the people you have. And I've been in some very fast-paced industries like the toy industry where, if you suddenly had a hit product on your hands, and I was a company that had the burning key card number 4 seller back in 1981. And once we had a hit on our hands, we had to run very quickly to keep up with the demand. And I think you need that sort of same mentality. People can operate lean, but they can move quickly when the opportunities present themselves. So, your fabulous entrepreneurial environment in this industry.
Yeah, I agree. And when I talk to executives at other companies, everyone's running as fast as they can right now, and they understand that this opportunity, it's not going to exist forever. And as we see these states open up, as we see states move from medical to adult use, and as we think about potential federal legalization that may come down the pipe. I just see a lot of people running to make their businesses better, to make them bigger. And I think you really hit the nail on the head with people. You've got to have a team of people who understand this business, appreciate the business, and really understand how to drive the costs out of this, and also to advance things very well. But you always need to bring it back to the customer. And some of the customer interaction that we have and the feedback that we have about our products is really guiding us. We start to move forward and think about new products for the future, and I'm sure you guys have those same sort of interactions as well.
Yeah, I mean, to me, I think too is what's unique too, I think, about the cannabis industry is that there's such a huge array of opportunities, and you just like being a buffet, you can't eat everything. You got to be very selective and try to pick your spots. And remember the generic pharmaceutical business, we had some of this were unique that everybody could look at the landscape and see, these products are going to come off patent during this time period, but you couldn't go after every one. So, and we decided to say, well, let's look farther out. Let's go where we can be the first, and let's pick ones that were really fit our expertise and technology. So we did that, and we end up having a number of first generic approvals. And I think some of that same discipline really applies here.
I agree, and I would imagine that the feeling of success when you get those generic approvals really isn't dissimilar to some of the successes that companies feel when they receive a license or get that final permit. As we know, one of the frustrations in this industry is the amount of regulation, but it really is important to keep this industry on the up and up and really move it towards the direction that it needs to go. Do you have any other frustrations in the cannabis industry?
Yeah, certainly. I mean, there's so many we could kill up. We could take the whole time about this, but certainly, the taxation is a real challenge. I mean, that whole thing with the 280E, and you think in the state of California, when I was there, well, they realized they weren't getting enough revenue from taxes. So what do? They raise the taxes on the legal firm. So they create an even greater spread. So kind of frustrating, because I think we were chatting before about or somebody had said about kind of the whack-a-mole of a legal firm, and then they get shut down, but they open up across the street the next day, and the frustration. We used to say in my prior company we would be 3x the size overnight if we could just shut down the illegal market. Certainly you always want to have things move faster with the regulations. And I think a lot of the intentions on social equity are very good, and I really applaud the industry for wanting to do it, but I hate to see it when it ends up kind of bogging down the process as well. So you see like with the MORE Act, but now maybe it's getting bogged down in the Senate because of social equity. To me, I look and said, the best thing we could do for social equity is to pass the banking. For probably the people that are getting harmed the most by the lack of banking are the minority-owned firms that perhaps have less access to capital, so the banking becomes even more difficult for them. So I just hope our regulators, let's keep moving on the social equity side, but let's keep things simple. Don't kind of overload every particular bill, and let's just try to get some of these things to the finish line.
So we've seen a lot of large MSOs presenting here, and the creation of these multi-billion-dollar companies. I think if you'd asked anyone 5 years ago, they would have said you'd be crazy that there'd be multi-billion-dollar U.S. cannabis companies. Do you think that even with these large companies out there, that there's opportunities for smaller firms?
Yeah, I think so. And even like my days in the toy industry, and we had it's a classic situation. An inventor, John Birdsall, and he had an idea for a product, and he shows it to about 20 companies, and the Mattel, Hasbro's, and everything, and they can't say yes to everything. All these folks say no, we say yes, and turned out to be number 4 selling industry. So we were like a small company that came out of nowhere. And I'd seen that with a generic pharmaceutical firm, a wireless telecom. Yeah, I think there's tremendous opportunity, particularly as we move into these new states, New Jersey, New York, big markets, and there can be some way for new players to get in there, take advantage of the opportunities. But I also do feel too that there's still going to be great opportunity for good brand people that create good brands, and I think there's still there's still a lot of improvement we could do in the user experience. I mean, I came from the edibles side, and problem with edibles, it can be a long onset and then a long offset. So we've got to get better at that. But I also think, for example, the beverage, very untapped opportunity there. And then also, another area to me, I think is, the whole thing about trying to have consumption lounges. Let's try to move things along, improve the user experience. And we're just barely getting started in that area.
Yeah, Nevada just approved consumption lounges, I think, yesterday. So I think that's a great advance. I always talk to people about Vegas. I know you're in Vegas, and how it really looks like almost a microcosm of normalization of cannabis. And, if you were in Vegas 10 years ago, it was a felony offense for any amount of cannabis. And I think, we got one of the first medical cultivation and production licenses when the state opened up for medical. I think there was less than 15,000 cards the first year. And, Nevada was the first state or the fastest state to go from medical to adult use. And anybody who's been to Vegas in the last, 5 years, particularly a couple times, has really noticed that cannabis, you're seeing advertising, you're seeing more usage. it really feels normalized, and I really see that moving across the entire country. And I think this addition of consumption lounges makes a ton of sense in that market. Hey, we're getting.
It's a thing. It's a new experience for me, kind of living down here in Vegas after mainly, being at conventions and stuff. But I remember coming to the conventions, and I had been involved in consumer electronics before. And you come down, and the things on the taxi cabs were all for kind of girly shows and things. And now you come down here, and it's Planet 13 and stuff, and it's kind of amazing to see how that's transformed.
I got to tell you, I think we're all looking forward to going to real conventions. And I know that, MJ Biz just opened a couple days ago for their convention in October. I can't wait to go to the next Benzinga conference in person. We're getting close to the end of time here. I know that Australis has outlined a sort of capital light strategy, and maybe you can tell us a little bit more about that.
Yeah, we're kind of a little bit later to the party, and we have to be very efficient at the capital side. So we feel, the strongest. So we made a couple of investments. One is with Green Therapeutics, and that through Green Therapeutics and indoor grow operation in Las Vegas, they've got several outstanding brands. So that gives us some brands that we can roll across the country. And then another interesting acquisition was ALP, which is the world-class experts in greenhouse design and operation, and through that gets relationship with big greenhouses around the country and can give us access to biomass. And then we feel the best use of capital will be more in the back end of the supply chain, kind of from brand manufacturing, delivery, distribution, dispensaries, and that'll be a more efficient use of capital. But we'll use our relationship with ALP, which I think will be very good for the growers, because the growers ALPS is launching kind of an Internet of Things line called Apis, which will help with the ongoing monitoring performance there. So I think it's a really win-win relationship between the greenhouses and ALPS and with Australis. So we think, but there'll be particular states where maybe vertical integration will make sense due to their particular licensing structure.
Awesome. Hey, so Amazon came out earlier this week with a couple cannabis announcements. It's been pretty uncommon to hear from Fortune 500 firms weighing in on cannabis, both with employee testing, but also their discussion about delivery and the support of the MORE Act. How do you feel that affects the industry?
Well, I think that's huge to see a firm like Amazon kind of come out, and it was kind of interesting to me because at my previous company, which made edibles, we came out with a CBD line. Of course, CBD was kind of like a dirty word on Amazon. You could call something hemp, but you could not call something CBD. So I kind of had this view of Amazon kind of being, on a certain part of the scale, tilted towards one end of the scale. So to hear them come out and say, and obviously, they've got business objectives and things behind it, but at least, I applaud them for coming out and making a statement.
Yeah, and hopefully we'll see some more sort of input from some of the larger companies out there around cannabis legalization. Hey, Patrick, I see you're back.
I'm here. I know my face makes people run for the hills, but I really love the discussion, you guys. Thanks for being here. This is great, and I love the Amazon commentary too. I think it's interesting. I knew it would come up today. But you guys are both doing some really, really cool things in the space. Body and Mind, Australis Capital, and we'll throw those tickers in the chat here for our investors too. Thank you both for being here. I'm sure I'll see you October 13th and 14th in New York City.
Can't wait.
And I hope we'll see you down in Vegas in October as well.
Oh, I'll be there, my friend.
Great.
All right. Take care.